In this lesson right here, it's got lesson 34. We're going to be dealing with ordering rational numbers and what that means. Okay, really when it comes down to it, we've done a lot of the ordering already. We've taken a look at rationals such as decimals and fractions. But today or in this lesson here, we're going to be looking at what happens if we have a mix of both. So first of all, let's think back to the previous lessons on types of numbers. Again, rational numbers are any number that can be described by a fraction. Okay, and again, these can be listed as fractions, mixed numbers, or decimals. Okay, all of those are considered to be rational numbers, as long as they are decimals that have some sort of repeat or some sort of, they end or they repeat along the line. Now, we're not going to be too worried about that because we're going to kind of round things off, but when ordering rational numbers, which are the same, such as fractions or decimals, okay, we create a similar look, or similar looks, to make it easier to order. Now, we've done that already in the past. When it came to just fractions, we would find a common denominator and compare. When they were decimals, we would make sure we have the same number of decimal places, and we would compare, and then we can figure out which one is bigger and which one is smaller. Now, the problem is when both decimals and fractions are used, we want to do the same thing. We want to create a common look, okay, to make it possible to order. Okay, so we need to create that common look to order. So that means that we're going to either want to put everything into fractional form or everything into decimal form in order to put them into either figure out which one's biggest or figure out what order they go in from smallest to biggest. Now, the first part that we're going to look at is how do we turn decimals into fractions. Okay, so part of it's going to be looking at how do we change decimals into fractions. Okay, and so to create a fraction from a decimal, okay, we're going to use the number that is behind the decimal, okay, as the numerator. Okay, so we're going to use the number that's behind the decimal as a numerator, and we're going to go through an example of that in just a little bit. Now, the denominator will always be a power of 10. Okay, so that means 10, 100, 1,000, okay, 10,000, okay, etc., etc. And it's going to be a 1 with the same number of zeros as the number of decimal places. And if you go back to a couple lessons ago, we talked about different placements. Okay, if we have one decimal place, it's a tenths. If we have two decimal places, it's hundredths, three decimal places, thousands, and so on and so forth. The example we're going to take a look at is how do we turn 0.5 into a fraction. Well, the first thing we do is we look at behind the decimal. Well, there's just a 5. Okay, so that becomes our numerator. And our denominator is in a power of 10 where we have a 1 with the number of zeros as behind the decimals. Okay, so there is one place behind the decimal. So we do a 1 with 1 0. And this would be our fraction, 5 over 10. Now we know that we can simplify that fraction to be 1 over 2. And so 0.5 is the same as 1 over 2. Other ones are maybe, could be a little simpler, could be a little more difficult. Well, this one, it's not necessarily the simplest here, but we can go through some of these other ones here as well. So let's look at 0.2. Well, again, we look at the decimal. What's right after? It's a 2. How many decimal places? 1. So we do a 1 with 1 0 behind it. We can divide these both by 2. And this will be 1 over 5. Okay, so that's how we can come up with that there. The next one here, we have a 0, 3. So we're not going to worry about the 0. We're going to just put the 3 up there. But here we have 2 decimal places, so we need a 1 with 2 decimals in there. Now, if we can simplify this by dividing both of these by 3, we want to do that. But there's nothing that we can divide into 100 and into 3 at the same time. So this right here is going to be our final answer. Okay, 3 over 100. And sorry, I'm just going to quickly square over my answers here so I can show you, or you can see which ones are the answers. Okay, so this one here, they are both already exactly as simple as we can get. Next one here, we have a 0, 0, 5. So we're going to do a 5. Again, we don't have to do the leading zeros in this case here, or the trailing ones. And there are 3 decimal places, so we're going to do 3 zeros. So this is 5 over 1,000. We can divide this by 5, we can divide this by 5, and this will be 1 over 200. okay? And that will be how we can simplify that, and we simplify it down to as small as we can get. If that's just a 3, that's a 3. If we can get it down to 1, we get it down to 1, because this will definitely be in lowest terms. Again, everything must be in lowest terms. Okay, if not, I will be marking it incorrect when you're going through your answers. Next here, 4. Now we're going to deal with ones that are a little bit different. Okay, here we have more than one number. Here we just had one number, more than one number. So here we have 0.25. So we're going to do 25 over, and now we have 2 decimal places, so we are going to do 100. Well, both of these can be divided by 25, and so this is 1/4. Now, if you know that 0.25 is 1/4 or 0.5 is 1/2, okay, it maybe makes it a little bit easier to put them into fractional form. Okay, but it's just showing how we go back and forth between the two. All right, so the next one is a little bit more difficult because it's a really big number, 304 over 1,000. Okay, 304 over 1,000. Well, we can divide both these by 2, and this is going to give us 152 over 500. We can divide these both by 2. And so we're going to get, let's see, this is 250. Now I'm trying to do this mental math. Over 76. We can divide it by 2 again. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. This one is going to be 38 over 125. And that will be as far as we can go. So it's 38 over 125 will be in lowest terms, is the same as 0.304. Now you might kind of recognize it's easier to see how big this is compared to that, but I do want you to go through how we convert fractions into decimals. Final one here, 1.5. Okay, now we look at the number, it's 15. Okay, this one's a little bit different. Okay, we're not necessarily just using the number behind the decimal, we'll use the whole thing, but this is 15 over 10 because there's only one decimal place, so we use the 10. This here is a mixed number, it's bigger than 1. So we can divide them both by 5, and this will be 3 over 2, and that right there is the final answer. Now again, just a note here, when organizing rational numbers, it might be easier to leave them in the largest form, so leave them in like thousands, hundreds, tens, something along those lines, okay, instead of like changing it into lowest terms. So when we're ordering, we can always change it into, or we can keep it in like in biggest terms, so to speak, or in a bigger term to kind of determine which one is in fact bigger. All right, now based on that, I'd like to do question 1, and that is just changing a decimal into a fraction and looking at making sure to simplify it into lowest terms. I want you to always into lowest terms.